then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
Yeah. So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich said, "We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing." You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Good evening, you're with GB News at 11 o'clock. The latest headlines. 4 men have been arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass at the Prime Minister's constituency home in Yorkshire. Police said officers were with the 4 men within a minute of them entering the grounds. The men are aged between 20 and 52 and remain in police custody for questioning tonight. Meanwhile, suspended Labour candidate Kevin Craig says he deeply regrets betting against himself and taking a punt on the Tories winning his own constituency. He says he'll fully comply with any investigation. And that comes after the former Conservative candidates Craig Williams and Laura Saunders also faced investigations amid allegations of betting on the date of the general election. Mr Williams says he committed an error of judgment but not an offence. A former engineer who worked on the faulty Horizon IT system claims the Post Office tried to put words into his mouth when he attempted to disclose concerns he had about the software. Gareth Jenkins was with Fujitsu for his whole professional career and was regarded as a distinguished employee up until his retirement in 2015. He said he was truly sorry for the wrongful convictions, but evidence he'd given about the system was used in the prosecutions of many sub-postmasters, evidence which has since been quashed. Today, he told the inquiry he never had complete oversight of all the systems and he relied on others to supply reliable information. Julian Assange has arrived at court on a remote island in the Pacific where his long-running campaign to avoid extradition to the United States will formally end. The 52-year-old WikiLeaks founder left the UK this morning after more than 1,900 days at Belmarsh prison. Assange will plead guilty to 1 charge after the US dropped 17 other espionage charges against him. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, which is roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain, meaning he's most likely to walk free. And you probably saw England's performance tonight, drawing 0-0 with Slovenia in their European Championship Group C game in Cologne. Manager Gareth Southgate brought on Palmer, Alexander-Arnold and Gordon from the bench at different times, but it wasn't enough to win the group. England, though, have still qualified for the knockout stages. Slovenia have also progressed as a third-place team. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Time now for Headliners.
And welcome to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans. I can see I've got a bit of a collar issue going on there. Joining me tonight, we have Josh Howie and Leo Kurz. How are you, gentlemen?
We need to get a mirror in that dressing room.
Yeah, I know. And the trick is when you're watching yourself on the monitor, you have to remember it's not a mirror. It's the opposite side.
Going for the wrong.
I've got to just move closely in there.
I can't believe I look
you,
like that.
You look fine. You look like a Wimbledon match official.
That's exactly what I was going for. I was
going to say Wimbledon janitor, but
whereas you look like one of those Playboy players from the 70s who was not really that bothered about tennis, more interested in polo. But anyway, we have some newspapers to get through. Let's have a look at those front pages. We'll kick off with the Daily Mail. Starmer, male readers were right about Labour in 2019. That's why we've changed. So they're going to take some credit. The Times, Labour man suspended for betting on election. The Telegraph, Cabinet Minister claimed he won £2,000 on election bet. Guardian, fifth Tory faces investigation as election betting scandal grows. Metro, freed Assange. I thought it said Fred Assange for a minute. They're all coming out now. He's on his way home. And finally, the Daily Star. Armageddon out of here. I think we've heard that one before. Anyway, those are your front pages. So we're going to kick off with The Guardian.
Yeah, so in the centre there is a photo of Julian Assange. We're going to do him later. And he's looking quite puffy.
Yeah, he looks old.
He looks old.
I know he's been sort of in exile or in hiding for a while, but yeah,
hopefully some online gym bro will get hold of him and knock him into shape in the next 6 months. I think it's the least he can do.
I think Joe Swash is a big fan of his.
Yeah, well, he's going back to Australia, so he'll get fit there.
He will.
Fit there.
Yeah, he reminds me a tiny bit of Michael Winner now, which is never a good look, is it? To be honest.
He's paid the ultimate price.
Calm down, dear. It's only a leak of several terabytes of information.
There's also a story on incredible loss, war's deadly toll of Gaza's journalists. And I'm sure if you actually read the article, they'd mention all the Gaza journalists who actually took part in October 7th and actually turned out to be connected to Hamas. Yeah, have they mentioned... no. The story at the top is fifth Tory faces investigation as election betting scandal grows. We've been covering this every day pretty much over the last week.
As have all the newspapers.
As have all the news. Well, that's strange, the connection there, Simon.
And so we haven't had any choice. But if I'm honest, I don't think we should have been. I mean, I just consider it the most extraordinarily trivial. It's damaging. It's kind of a sordid, squalid, sleazy end of a regime.
It's a crime. Yeah. It's a crime, but it's not just the Tories that have been doing it. Labour, a Labour guy stood down after betting on himself losing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's showing some confidence.
At least he didn't have any inside information.
It's a nice little bit of human interest in the midst of all the attempts to grapple with the nation's future.
I think now that
this is serious. This is
you
like
think it's serious, yeah.
Yeah, this is like Nancy Pelosi. Not that I'm suggesting that Nancy Pelosi's done anything.
in play, wasn't there?
Yeah, I know Nancy
Pelosi's got millions.
Yeah, from her legitimate, incredibly lucky gambles in the stock market. I mean, Warren Buffett should look out.
She has a sixth sense.
Yeah, she really does have a sixth sense. Of course, everything's above board there. I'm not suggesting anything else, but she's made much more money. But this is actually, it's not the amount of money. It's the fact that it's a crime, and they're not. It's not a victimless crime. They're taking money from gambling firms, which are, who doesn't feel sorry for gambling firms?
Well, not necessarily. If they go on Betfair, they're just taking money from other gamblers.
Right.
So that.
But yeah, two have now been suspended. I think it's more also just the fact that it's. Like, Sunak has not grappled with this quickly, decisively until now. Until like every other scandal that's hit this government, it grows out of proportion to where he just has got egg on his face.
So he's no better than...
10 quid says he doesn't deal with it by the end of the week.
He's no better than Boris Johnson was with Pincher, right? Pincher was the end of him, not dealing with it. This is what gets him, isn't it, in the end? It's the old Al Capone thing again and again.
Yeah.
You can drive the country off a cliff,
So it's interesting, but it's interesting to see Labour's response to their politician, where they were like, they've instantly pulled backing from him. They've returned all money, because it turns out he's quite a big donor to the Labour Party, and they've given back like £100,000. But the funny thing about that guy, the Labour guy, is he turns out he's like a PR for crisis. Right. So I'm just wondering if he's kind of gone, you know what, immediately suspend me and give me all my money back, and then we'll talk in 6 months.
So he's a donor and was a candidate as well.
So I wonder how that's connected.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like instinctively that should be against the rules, but it's not, presumably, otherwise you wouldn't be saying it quite so.
I'm guessing not. No.
Fair enough. We'll go over to the Express, Leo.
So the Express has Farage, UK must end funding France until small boats are halted. So he's talking here about Britain gives France, apparently it's given France £500 million so far, and this is to sort of help deal with the migrant crisis and try and stop people coming across the Channel, which obviously isn't working. France clearly aren't fulfilling their end of the deal, and he's making the point that the French Navy actually escort the boats across the Channel to the halfway point, and then our Coast Guard or whatever bring them the rest of the way.
And the RNLI pick them up, you know.
Yeah, and he's saying, why aren't we taking the boats back to France? I mean, obviously it would create a headache for Macron. It would create political ructions. But Tony Abbott did a similar thing in Australia. He took boats back to Indonesia, and even though it created ructions, it stopped the boats. You know, showing that you're serious about it stops the boats. And you know, if somebody's taking a pleasure boat across the Channel, there's all these restrictions and regulations. So why aren't people, you know, having to meet the same restrictions and regulations if they're illegal immigrants?
And the Timor Sea, north of Australia, towards Indonesia, has got some properly big fish in it.
Yeah.
Some quite sharp ones as well. So that's a different proposition altogether. I mean, Nigel has actually been pretty active on this.
First name basis. Look at him.
Nigel.
Oh, Nigel.
Boris, I've mentioned as well. Who have you got?
Kem.
Rachel.
She doesn't like me calling her Kemi.
I think Nigel Farage is entitled to claim this territory, though.
He's definitely entitled.
He certainly kept it in the news. He's what, entitled?
Just a little.
I don't think.
Sorry, Nigel.
No, I think he is. I think he is, because he's actually, he's investigated this. He landed on the French side, didn't he? Poked about a bit. You know, he's not leaping on a bandwagon here.
Yeah, and he's one of the people who did it and was shining a light on it when it wasn't, politically fashionable to do it, and when people, all the slings and arrows were slung at you.
People were just rolling their eyes. Oh, what's he going on about? But it's mounted and mounted. Anyway, nothing else on the front page there. You can buy wine in this country by the look of it. That's interesting. Finally, the Daily Star. No, sorry, not the Daily Star. The Times. Sorry, I've jumped one. Yeah.
Social media is path to stupidity, says Church of England. They've released a report, and they've got an interesting thing. They said if you could put all your tweets printed out in a single document and then sit down with Christ and read it. And I'd like to think that Jesus would follow me.
You think so?
I think he would be amused by my wit, my passion for female rights and children's rights, and for our Jewish people, Jesus.
I'm not going to raise his single most obvious objection to that.
Which is what? He wasn't on Twitter?
You killed him.
Who's me?
That is literally your single most historically well-founded...
Did you read the Bible? No. The New Testament, the sequel?
I watched the Mel Gibson miniseries.
No, you did not. No, it was the Romans who killed Jesus.
Ironically, I don't get my history lessons from Mel Gibson's miniseries. I get my history lessons from Mel Gibson's social media.
From his feed.
Which is much harder.
I mean, it is a little bit ironic, isn't it? Because some people would say, that the Church did a lot to keep us in the Dark Ages between roughly the 4th and 12th century. So
they didn't allow people to have Twitter.
No,
they banned
that's
TikTok.
Exactly right. Yeah, and people complained then that they were the source of all incuriosity and superstition. Do you think they're in a position now to preach?
Possibly. I don't know if anybody's listening, because they're not very popular on social media. And I think what we've got now is because the Church is sort of withdrawn from providing that sort of morality and structure in people's lives, these fads have sort of just spread across social media. So we've got a new religion, a religion of social justice, with all this weird stuff, the critical race theory, social justice, all gender ideology.
Which, in your view, is only holding the ball up until Islam can take over anyway.
Oh, yeah, we're currently locked in a battle.
Mohammed is on it today.
There's currently a civilizational battle going on between Islam and the West. So Islam's trying to turn us Muslim, and we're trying to turn Islam gay.
So, I mean, just as a...
And Jews just don't want people thinking that we killed Jesus.
has the church completely withdrawn from... I thought the church was trying to get... It was a bit like, you know, the Met Police and stuff. They have little tweets, don't they, occasionally? I don't follow them, but I bet they do. A bit of a sort of like... I bet there's a tweet for the day, isn't there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember watching the coronation. Justin Welby was reading his lines from an iPad.
Oh, really?
Which I remember thinking that he hasn't bought that especially for the occasion. He sits in bed at night scrolling.
I'd like to see his browsing history.
No man is a... This was the phrase, no man is a hero to his browser. Anyway, those are the front pages sorted. But stay with us for the last... this is not the last, the second section. We'll have the latest details on Assange's release, Kemi versus Who, and a glimmer of hope for Rishi. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign. And thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the First World War restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave. Because they didn't warrant, he deserved one, because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers. Josh, we have the Telegraph now on the murky details of Julian Assange's release. Will the truth take as long to come out as he did?
Indeed, and he's clean as well, which everyone will be happy to hear after his dirty protests. Biden administration cut deal with Assange ahead of potential Labour takeover. So obviously the imminent new leaders of our country, and the idea being that because Labour might be more sympathetic to his cause. They'd be less likely, even if the court case that was going through the Supreme Courts found in favour of the American government, that they would still find a reason to not extradite him. So that's the idea. There's a bunch of other reasons as well, including the fact that Australia now politically has sort of come out in favour of Assange. And obviously he's a hugely divisive figure in terms of, well, especially when you're a free speech advocate, it makes it a bit more complicated because he did release information, or his website released information, which did show the terrible things that the American military got up to in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the same time, it also put people at risk because by not censoring any of the names of the people, the local population who helped America, it put those lives at risk, and we don't know if people died because of it.
Absolutely. I mean, his argument was that it was only because they were able to keep so much secret and tell so many lies that the wars got started in the first place. But as you say, it's. I think it's more intractable than people pretend. I've always been sort of slightly wrong-footed by the extent to which people know what they think about Assange. I think it's quite a complicated issue, personally. You know, I thought it was particularly complicated myself when he was facing what I frankly felt were trumped-up charges of sexual misconduct. Well, again, because that was quite obvious what was going there.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he'd released, because he released so much data, and just he could have released it. And I think the first tranches of data were released in a way, it was done with the Guardian, with media outlets, and parts were redacted, so people were kept safe. And then there just seemed to be this huge dump of data. And I'm a free speech advocate, but I also worked in intelligence, and knowing that there's people, patriotic people, who've risked their lives for their country, who are then being put at risk or being killed because of this data breach, and they might have nothing at all to do with any of the crimes that he revealed. So yeah, as you say, it's complicated.
It's complicated. And of course, there was Edward Snowden as well, who managed to get away. Is he still in Russia?
Yeah. So I just want to say something that I know what you're saying in terms of Assange, and it seemed like sort of trumped-up charges. I just remember reading a very long testimony article by one of the women, and it sounded pretty dodged to me. But that's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, me too. Believe all women. Yeah, well, that's right.
His health is suffering now as well anyway, I believe, so that's possibly an issue. I think they were thinking he might die in jail.
Well, he was also saying that he might kill himself if he went to America and whatnot. He's now married. He married one of his lawyers. I think that's a bit hack, personally.
Culture wars in the first section, Leo. It's a well-matched bout between the Tory heir apparent and heir to the Scottish super-strength lager fortune.
Yeah, so this is Kemi Badenoch, who's hit back after the rich lefty David Tennant, that's her words, by the way, although I agree with her, calls for her existence to end. So in case you're wondering if David Tennant has become a white supremacist suddenly, he possibly has. But he's won the Celebrity Ally Award at an LGBT award ceremony on Friday. Oh, I love how we're living under austerity, but the government's still got money to spend on LGBT awards for people. They should give an award to whoever manages to get a government crossing every 20 yards.
Is it a government thing?
I bet they get money. Everybody gets money. Arts Council money. There's going to be money going. I guarantee. 100%. I bet. I went to when I worked in the public sector, I went to so many of these ritzy award ceremonies and stuff, and I couldn't believe it. But anyway, so he said he wished she didn't exist, and he said, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up, talking about Kemi Badenoch there. So she hit back on Twitter saying, I will not shut up. I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall, which is the controversial trans and LGBT charity, over the safety of women and girls. A rich, lefty, white male celebrity so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government by calling publicly for my existence to end. And she says this is what Labour's going to be like when they get into power, if they get into power. Yeah. And I mean, it is. The Labour are they're bringing through self-ID. They're going to make life great for women like me.
But David Tennant is he isn't part of the Labour government, obviously, he is like this chap who is just sort of goes on Twitter and sort of goes, oh, just be nice. He has
a trans child.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
And so he is pretty
non-binary.
He is pretty
I've got a vegan cat.
No, but what a coincidence that you have all these rich celebrities and a huge proportion of them, way outside of the number of actual trans, just happened to have trans children.
Are you saying it's a vegan cat? It's
a fad.
Remember 20 years ago, all the celebrities were getting Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs. The trans child is the new... And it's ruined things for African kids who used to get rescued by Madonna. Now they get rescued by Charlize Theron, and she puts them in a dress.
What do you think about Kemi Bad not highlighting the fact that he's white and she's the only black woman in government? Because to me, that sets my teeth on edge slightly. She doesn't need to resort to that.
I totally agree with you. I think that's the one part of the statement that I think, if anything, though, it does point out the hypocrisy of him seemingly calling out for this woman, like, from a very far left position, but arguably, like, who are you to do so? And the idea that, and there's someone commented online, like, that he sort of said, I wish that she'd end, and then realised how terrible that sounded, and then was like, oh no, what I mean is I don't mean ill of her. No, you just said that she shouldn't exist. Like, it doesn't get worse than that. And then I just want her to shut up. Oh, you want this black woman to shut up? Like, that's not good optics. But the analogy that always comes back in these moments is Helen Joyce did this brilliant thing about how it's World War II Japanese survivors kept on fighting on the islands afterwards, and that's going to be
in the
jungle, and that's going to be the parents of trans kids, because to admit that they'd made a mistake and gone along with this ideology, that it is a trend and their children have been harmed accordingly.
Yeah, if you cut your child's penis off,
whatever it is,
you need it to be real.
You really need to live in the jungle.
They are really in it to the end, because to admit otherwise would be to admit a terrible...
I don't like that analogy. I had a lot of time for those Japanese soldiers. They dug in deep and they survived, and they held true to their beliefs.
They came out fitter and healthier than they went
Exactly. They missed 30 years of worst of consumerism.
I'm sorry to have triggered you, Simon.
No, I'm not having that. Anyway, a glimmer... The parents who did that, they're not like the Japanese soldiers, because they're not oblivious to it. They've got no excuse. The news is out. The facts are in. The Japanese soldiers were deep undercover in the jungle. That's not
but the news because there was an
historical piece of nonsense.
That's not true, actually. They did. There was lots of evidence that the war was over, and they didn't want to believe it.
About time, Helen Joyce.
I read a big book. I read another big interview about that.
Wound her neck in. Stay in your lane, Joyce. Right. Daily Mail have a glimmer for Rishi Sunak, Josh. This is Reform, who may be stalling after their honeymoon period.
Indeed. Has Nigel Farage peaked? 3 polls show Reform support it falling in a glimmer of hope for Rishi Sunak 9 days before crucial election. This is on the back of Nigel Farage coming out and saying sort of arguably pro-Putin comments, and that seems to have made an impact.
That's what we're saying it is.
That's what one of the polls says when talking about how the West provoked Russia's invasion. I think there's been a little bit of backtracking from Mr. Farage on that point. Someone put two clips together.
Nigel.
Yes. Oh, Nigel, yes. There's someone very cleverly put 2 clips together of him in the same position, but as his jackets changed between clips, where he was sort of saying we shouldn't be giving more, and now, like, weapons and stuff, and then it was like, and now we should, or whatever.
It's interesting you say backtracking, and obviously, you know, there's a divide between us on this. I think he was misquoted, misrepresented and mischaracterised. I think what he was saying was entirely in line with what he said in 2014, and it's quite interesting that Boris Johnson went in and said, this is a historical nonsense, using my word, ahistorical. And Farage immediately found a newspaper front page from 2016 in which Boris Johnson had said exactly the same thing. But it is difficult to talk about this issue, to say there's a difference between saying the West provoked Putin, they gave him an opportunity, they gave him a plausible reason to go in, and then saying he is morally exculpated from this and it's all our fault. Those are different things. Anyone who gets involved in current affairs, foreign affairs, understands that there are, you know, tiers of moral attribution that are perhaps separated from diplomatic, errors.
And you're seeing the mainstream media really coming for Reform and coming for Farage now, because they've seen that he's a threat. So, you know, suddenly the system goes into motion, and I mean they're pulling these comments out and really kind of taken them out of context, particularly in the context of the Reform Party, when, you know, Richard Tice has come out and been a staunch supporter of Ukraine, even taken vehicles, done fundraising and taken vehicles over to Ukraine. So, you know, he's done more than any other politician.
Can I just say, first of all, media has it in for politicians, and they will find whatever it is.
Yeah,
I don't think it's Reform specifically. And I will say that
Tory papers have it in for Labour, and they have it in for Reform. Labour papers have it in for the Tories, and they have it in for Reform.
But today, someone else from Reform and a potential someone running to be an MP also came out with pro-Putin comments. And the fact is that as much
because they're digging through social media.
No, it's not social media. This guy is giving talks today and gave a specific interview still praising Putin. So there are people,
him?
Was he praising, or did he say something? You know, something.
He said that Putin. He said something like Putin is great, and he's not.
Putin is great.
Something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
I
that
do
was
find
the gist
it
of it.
quite
But he said a great leader, and then he sort of...
It may be coincidence, but it's obviously I hate to use the term playbook, but it's exactly the same smear that was put on Trump, right? The idea that he was colluding with Putin. Putin was essentially installing Trump. And it was interesting that then, I've said this many times, but throughout 4 years of Trump presidency, Putin didn't make a single move, and it's only when it's Biden is in that you have war again.
Yeah.
Well, I think those are quite good outcomes.
Although, I mean, if you look at the actual sort of nuts and bolts of what was happening on the ground, Trump used Ukraine as a sort of point. He said, you know, I'm not going to give you funding and weaponry unless you do this, unless you give me dirt on Hunter, which turned out there's loads. So Trump was right.
Well, we're halfway through. In the second half, we have trouble in Canada, Rowling rowing for a row, and the last white male newsreader in captivity. See you in a couple of minutes.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. It will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. 1 or 2 heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night, lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect, though, much of England and Wales just dry and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today, and across England and Wales again, mid-20s, maybe up to 31 in the capital. We are going to see a change, though, as low pressure comes in. You can see this swirl here, bringing a band of cloud and patchy rain across the country, followed by plenty of showers. That is a cold front, and so it will introduce cooler conditions. One more very warm day across the southeast on Thursday, but turning fresher for all by Friday.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
welcome back to Headliners. So we have the Mirror now, Leo. Tommy Robinson has been helping the Mounties with their inquiries.
Yeah, so Tommy Robinson has been arrested in Canada after a speech on suspicion of immigration offences. So he's been arrested on suspicion of immigration offences. That's not what the speech was about, although he probably touched on that topic, to be honest. And the Mirror says a video shows the rattled far-right activist as he's detained in Calgary. So I went and watched the video. He's not rattled at all. He's like cool as a cucumber, even cracks jokes as they're putting him in the van, because I think he sort of knows it's a bit of a charade. There's been apparently immigration officials who then interviewed him were baffled as to how he could have be seen to have breached any regulations, and it's obviously an order that's come from up above from Fidel Trudeau.
There was some big sort of furry bloke, wasn't there, in a lumberjack shirt who was like plain clothes, and he was asking him what it was. And he said it was like an outstanding immigration warrant, sort of suggesting it was from some previous visitation.
There is some irony of being arrested for immigration. I believe Alanis Morissette is adding a new verse. I think the interesting thing in this article also is it says the video shows the shocked anti-Islam activist as he's handcuffed. I think their choice of language is interesting there.
Who, the Mirror?
The Mirror, because he isn't, or he would say that he's not an anti-Muslim.
No, he would. He does say that.
Well, OK. I don't know if you think he's anti-Muslim or anti-Islam.
You're saying...
They're saying that he's... I would think they'd have it out for him.
The usual thing people say is he's a racist, and he says, I'm not a racist. The issue I have is with Islam, which is a belief system. But
so the fact that they've phrased it that way, which is how he would phrase it...
Oh, OK.
I'm saying is interesting that they haven't gone anti-Muslim.
Right.
Like, while I believe he has said a few anti-Muslim statements in the past, but the point is the framing here of the Mirror, which is the left-wing paper.
Point,
I know, but
I'd always believe Tommy Robinson to be some terrible, horrific racist because that's what everybody says. And then I sort of researched to see what he'd done, and a lot of it. I remember when everybody's angry because he stood on the pavement outside a grooming gang court case, and obviously, it's bad that he could have jeopardised the trial. These trials take years to build; they're very fragile. But then nobody seemed to be angry about what was happening. The crimes that were being done by these men that were on trial.
But it's quite interesting as well, the both of you said it's sort of ironic that he gets arrested for immigration. I don't think he would call that ironic. I think Nick would call it anarcho-tyranny, right?
Yeah.
The whole point is that he's trying to draw attention to the fact that there are people, Nick Dixon, who talks about anarcho-tyranny, but it's not his phrase, but he likes to use it. This is the point, though. If you play close to the rules, then they'll come for you.
Yeah.
If you like drop a stitch. If, on the other hand, you commit the most flagrant abuse of the entire spectrum of Western civilization's expected codes of behaviour, they would just wave you through.
Yeah, if he'd waltzed over the border in a kefi calling for the death to the West, then he'd probably be sitting in a Canadian government-funded flat right now.
Face the wall, my darling. J.K. Rowling has agreed to meet the shadow muggle Rachel Reeves to discuss Labour's position on hate groups like the LGB Alliance.
J.K. Rowling agrees to meet Labour, but sets conditions over labelling of hate groups. So actually, she hasn't really agreed to meet them. She did a very, again, ironic's the wrong word, but basically she said, I'll be happy to meet after Keep Prisons Single-Sex, Lesbian Labour, Women's Rights Network and Women's Place and the LGB Alliance have been given in-person meetings because they have so far been denied meetings with any of the Labour leadership. And also, Angela Rayner, during her election 2020 for the Labour leadership, she said that she signed or went along with this ridiculous pro-trans activist document that said that two of those organisations, Women's Place and LGB Alliance, were hate groups, which they are not. They are just LGB Alliance fights for gay rights. That's
if indeed we accept that the idea of a hate group is a meaningful category anyway.
Well, it's great that what's so interesting is that this hasn't been really part of this election. I know the election's gone very quickly, but J.K. Rowling has single-handedly, by printing that letter in the Times, managed to raise this issue, bring it up, because this is really the last chance to push Labour on these points. As Leo said earlier, they are going by self-ID by the back door. They're talking about pulling back some of the present government's recommendations for not teaching gender ideology in school. Harriet Harman was on one of our competitors' radio, and she was like, oh, there's no evidence that it's been pushed in our primary schools, apart from lots of evidence, including just my own life. And also the threat to women's spaces, because this government, again, would looking to, or promised to, in the Equality Act, say sex is biological sex. And that needs to be clarified, because until it is, those safe spaces, supposedly, they are under threat.
But what, Josh, what about the feelings of women like me? Do you just not care about us? I mean, I could get thrown out of a women's changing room. I could get thrown out of, I wasn't allowed to participate in an under-12s girls karate competition. And you would have... how's that fair?
They would have beaten you up.
Yeah, I know. There's no advantage for women like me in sport.
It's extraordinary that both you and David Tennant could come from the same tiny gym. Anyway, ITV News presenter just strapped a target to his back, Leo.
So ITV News at 10 presenter...
I wonder where I was going with strapped after that.
So, ITV News at 10 presenter Tom Bradby says there aren't many white male anchors left. So this is an interview with the Radio Times, which presumably was only read by white male people. So Bradby was asked if he felt exposed to the winds of change because he may be regarded as pale, male and stale, which is apparently an acceptable thing to say, even though it would be incredibly racist if you said it about any other type of people. But he said, I don't particularly, because that's not my decision. There aren't many white male anchors left, so I feel a bit less nervous about that than possibly I should. And yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be pilloried for saying this. Remember when Nick Dixon said, I've been cancelled from this thing for being a white male, and everybody acted like he was responsible for transatlantic slavery. Yeah. He invented
do you watch Andrew Gold's? He's quite good, and he talks about that he's excellent, and discusses the fact that it's just quite openly said to your face now. If you try and get if you try and present a documentary you've made, authored, research, paid for, and they're like, it's great, but can we get somebody else?
Well, we've seen it in comedy, we've seen it everywhere. You would think comedy would be one of the mediums that would survive it, because it's one of the few things that relies on a sort of active barometer of success in terms of laughter.
And being good at it.
Being good at it, but actually it hasn't, and it has crept into these comedy clubs that we're famous at, and their numbers have dropped accordingly.
I think obviously there are some people like Ricky Gervais who are just too big to fail, you know, but I think there is, statistically, as Andrew says, this is the thing. You can create a mixed bill, one white guy, one, lesbian, one black guy, whatever. But
sounds like the setup to one of my jokes.
If that's one of each category in a bill of 4, but there's 20 times as many white blokes just because that's the demographics of the country who are trying to get ahead, that makes the odds very difficult.
And also, what's also been pointed out recently is that the problem isn't just this sort of categorisation, it's that so much of the comedy has become the same joke, so that it doesn't matter, the perspective is the same.
That's true.
And so that's even more boring for the audiences. I think the most interesting thing that he says in the article, he says, I feel a bit less nervous about that than I possibly should, i.e. the fact that he is the last white survivor means that he feels like he can't be fired now because there's got to be
it's the last one of a breeding pair.
I also don't like how the fact that they don't say GB News. They do Sky News is presented by this and this. It's like, come on, guys. I know. Come on, Telegraph.
I think he'll be presenting that thing about dodgy holiday companies with Angela Rippon soon. Anyway, Jewish support is bouncing back for Labour, Josh, presumably on space hoppers.
Yeah, Jewish support for Labour. Bounces back under Keir Starmer. So this is a recent survey of about 2,000 Jewish people, and they found that it's rocketed Labour support to 46% under Keir Starmer. Now, that is up from 11% at the last election under Jeremy Corbyn, and that is an incredible jump. Jewish people, by the way, we're not, not in a monogamous group. Yes, we are monogamous. We are actually a very monogamous group.
Saying the quiet part out loud.
We're not an homogenous group, but also Labour Tory support has gone up is about 30%, which is higher than the UK. What's interesting about this is during the last election, when Jewish comics and our allies and Jewish people were fighting against the anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, it was proven by the EHRC report that Labour had broken the law. We were told that we were doing so because we were actually Tory supporters and that we just wanted to not pay any taxes. And I don't know if Sophie Hagen...
Those are both admirable qualities.
I don't know if Sophie Hagen has deleted her tweet from the Time. So it's interesting now that Jewish support has sort of bounced back to that
Jewish
level.
support was traditionally, I mean, as you say, not homogenous, but it did tend to lean leftward, right?
I would say as a general rule. So it is indicative of the good job I think Starmer has done. What I can't believe is that I'm at this point where I finally get to vote for Labour again after the last couple of elections of not. And now this whole female thing has happened and the inability of women to deal with women's rights.
We have one more story to get in before the break. More Jewish news, Leo. This is one of the more controversial exemptions to Israeli military service.
Yes, so an Israeli court has ruled that ultra-Orthodox men must be drafted for military service. If you don't know what the ultra-Orthodox Jews are, they're like the most Jewish-looking Jews. Like, if you ask Kanye
Don't cut
West,
to me.
If you ask Kanye West to draw a Jew, it's, they're really
big hats,
Jewish-looking.
right?
The hats, have they got the curly bits?
And significantly, of course, hugely fertile, right?
Huge
have
families. I think the
massive families,
the average family size is like 5 or 6.
You can cut to me now.
But they do virtually keep Israel viable, I think, because, like, as with all Western developed countries, they slip below fertility rate otherwise.
Because they're so sort of hardcore. I mean, they're ultra Orthodox. So they're projected to become 21% of the population by 2042. They make up 13% of the population at the moment. They've traditionally been exempted from military service, so the men can study the Torah, which is the.
What are they called? The schools? They have a name.
5 books. Oh, with the yeshiva, which I've studied at.
Have you?
How long is it if they need to? I can't do military service because I've got to read.
And
it's literally a lifetime of study.
That's entry level. The Talmud is the big one, isn't it?
Well, that's rabbis arguing with each other over millennia. But the Torah study, it's all about interpretation. So you could literally just be reading the same passage over and over again, and there's 1,000 different commentaries on it.
A bit like Match of the Day.
Yeah,
it's a little bit like that.
But anyway, they're now going to have to go and fight in the army.
And a lot of people are very happy about this in Israel. Now, I'm not Israeli. I don't have any input on that society, but a lot of people think it's a very good thing. I personally do think it's a very good thing as well. And also it could bring down the Israeli government because Netanyahu has a lot of his support from that contingency of Orthodox Jews who didn't want to fight, and it's fair. So go for it.
That's part 3 in the bag. Coming up, we have the quirkier end of the news, lavatory innovations on the railways and the Brits getting tongue-tied. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe, and only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the G-Hit card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
And welcome back to the final section of tonight's headliners. We kick off with the Daily Star. They have a story about an unusually well-targeted protest, Josh.
Very nice. 4 arrested as climate protesters take a dump in lake at Rishi Sunak's house. This is a youth demand. And this is a 21-year-old student from Manchester. He went, he had a curry before.
Did he really?
No.
No, OK. I don't think you need to embellish this.
Well, that'd be a racist hate crime.
That would be, yeah, if it had been, yeah. But also, I'm wondering if he had ate something with, like, orange food dye.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that might have helped as well. It doesn't show if it's...
Can you explain, though, did he squat under the waterline and then evacuate? Or
that's
did
what
he,
he's
like,
saying.
stand
Now,
on the
they've
shore?
cut away. The video, unfortunately, cut away. So there's no proof of actual poo.
No, OK.
Poogate here. He could be lying, even.
Yeah.
But he had a shirt on.
It's like Dirty Harry.
Yeah. I mean,
I know what you're thinking.
There is a nice thing about the connection between our rivers and how dirty they are and the sewage there.
Well,
so there is some...
This isn't cleaning them up. This is adding to the problem. Well, also, they sent out a press release saying the young man murdered a brown snake in the multi-millionaire's lake.
He murdered a brown snake? Is that slang?
Also, I've never heard of that before.
Is that Manchester slang?
I'm going to start using it. Also, they're called Youth Demand. One of them is 52, another one's 43. It's like, you're not, especially for Manchester.
Hello, my fellow brown snake.
I don't know, if he does go to jail, though, hopefully, then it would be nice when he's sort of like in the yard with everyone, what are you in here for? Let me show you.
I think, actually, he might be given some preferential treatment if I curled one out in the Prime Minister's lake. I think that's... Honestly, it's a lot better than attacking oil paintings, isn't it? Monuments, yeah. Telegraph have a story, Leo, that initially set my spidey senses tingling, but no, this is not trans waffle, in fact.
I had the exact same thoughts. A train company has put sanitary bins in men's lavatories to reduce incontinence anxiety. So Southern Railways has installed bins for disposal of pads and nappies as part of Prostate Cancer's UK's Boys Need Bins campaign. So, you know, normally you'd see sanitary bins in a male toilet and you'd think, oh, this is some sort of trans thing, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, actually, it's to get rid of... It's
a medical thing. And actually, a lot of blokes they have the stats, is it over 1 in 6 over 60 or something?
1 in 3 over 65 have urinary incontinence problems, and 1 in 20 over 60 have bowel incontinence problems.
So, yeah, you've got to be able to
very unlucky of you, Simon.
Yeah, I know. I'm 59, Josh. I'm still in the clear. I will be for some time.
You get that train quite a lot, don't you? Up from Brighton.
Oh, God love them. So, anyway, that's all good. We're happy with that. Although I bet it's trans waffle by the back door, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it's got me thinking. When I'm not incontinent, but I do like convenience.
Yeah.
And I don't like touching the, door handles in toilets and stuff, so I might get one of these.
You've learned the Alan Partridge system for getting in without touching the handles.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a nappy.
Everyone's favourite encouraging stepdad is at it again, Josh. To be fair, he didn't know quite what a disappointing spectacle Gareth and the boys were going to put on this evening.
Yeah, Keir Starmer slaps down Gary Lineker over branding England team poo, as Labour leader says country needs to get behind the footballers. The thing is, this isn't a slap down at all. He just said, "Oh, come on, there's an important game. Let's just get behind the team."
Yeah.
So it's not a slap down.
No.
That's.
Keir isn't capable of delivering a slap down, is he?
Yeah.
Certainly not towards Gary Lineker.
Well, Gary Lineker he probably said something like, "Oh, this squad, they're like 1930s Germany." For Gary Lineker, everything is like 90s. You see that monitor, that jacket, that's like 1930s Germany.
That referee reminded me of Rosa Luxemburg.
You can't stop these.
No,
unless he sees mobs on the streets of London calling for the extermination of Jews, then he says nothing.
Yeah, then he's quite straight.
Final story. We've got about 30 seconds to get through this one. Daily Mail, a bit of anthropology, Leo.
So Britons may no longer be masters of small talk, as research finds that 88% of us find it difficult and awkward to chat to strangers. Yeah, of course. We're British. We're British. I mean, how do autistic people even get diagnosed in Britain? Like, none of us want to make eye contact. This is what I thought
was weird. They said no longer. We're no longer the best. I don't know. When were we ever the best?
When were we Brazilian?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or the French in the 17th century, small talk with the lacy handkerchiefs. The Brits were always like, ooh.
Yeah, we just do big talk.
Where's me beef?
How would you think?
Well, no, I mean, the good thing is I can do about 10 minutes on trans with anybody.
Small talk.
That's my gift.
I'll have a vodka martini. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail. Starmer, male readers were right about Labour in 2019, and that's why we've changed. The Telegraph, Cabinet Minister claimed he won £2,000 on an election bet. The Times, Labour man suspended for betting on election. The Guardian, fifth Tory faces investigation as election betting scandal grows. Freed Assange is owing home. What does that mean, owing home? Anyway, he's on his way. And finally, the Daily Star, Armageddon out here, and those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh and Leo. It'll be Andrew Doyle tomorrow with Leo again and Nick Dixon. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you for your company. See you again soon. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. It will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. One or two heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night, lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect that much of England and Wales just dry and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today, and across England and Wales again, mid-20s, maybe up to 31 in the capital. We are going to see a change, though, as low pressure comes in. You can see this swirl here, bringing a band of cloud and patchy rain across the country, followed by plenty of showers. That is a cold front, and so it will introduce cooler conditions. One more very warm day across the southeast on Thursday, but turning fresher for all by Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
What percent?
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with